welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
And I am Ron.
And this is our Tales from the Crypt Present series and our review of Demon Knight, starring Billy Zane, William Sadler, Jada Pinkett, CCH Pounder, Thomas Hayden Church, and John Kassir. Directed by Ernest Dickerson and Gilbert Adler. Released in 1995 on a budget of $12 million, grossed $21 million at the box office. So, okay, Ron, so Tales from the Crypt, man. Give me the lowdown. You know, what's your connection to this, loved series by a lot of folks?
Well, when you grow up with stolen HBO like I did, you learn to embrace certain things. And for me, I didn't care about Dream On or the Larry Sanders Show or any of that stuff. For me, it was always, you'd hear that creepy organ music, da 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 da, and then I was either right there, ready to watch it, or I was like fleeing the television. There was no, depending on my age, there was absolutely no middle ground. When I was a kid, the Crypt Keeper was like the creepiest thing on television, and then once I hit 12 or 13, it became the most awesome thing on television.
I did not grow up with HBO, stolen or otherwise, in the house. Occasionally we had Showtime. That was our channel of go-to. But I did know what Tales from the Crypt was because it went into syndication at some point. And it was after I think it had really been a thing. And by the time I got around to it, I was in my teen years and it just didn't work for me. And I want to tell you what ruined it for me. You can blame all of it on the fact that Friday the 13th, the series, was such a huge disappointment. And I watched that show from beginning to end. So and by the way, folks, there will never be a podcast about that show. No. So I remember some of those episodes vividly, most of them for being as bad as they were. It's also the reason I never watched Freddy's Nightmares. And I just figured, this is another one of those. But now it would have been hard to not be a horror fan and not know who the Crypt Keeper was and no Tales from the Crypt. So I was aware of it, and I know I have seen episodes here and there, but I did not grow up as a fan of it. I didn't necessarily didn't like it. It was just something I never watched or paid attention to. So this is going to be interesting to go in with somebody who was a super fan of it growing up.
Did you miss the cartoon? There was a cartoon starring the Crypt Keeper.
I did not, but I'm not surprised.
They had the Crypt Keeper and the Vault Keeper. They went back to the EC Comics source material, and they found all the various keepers they could bring out. They were all in like a Saturday morning cartoon series.
Oh, wow. Well, that was back. I'll say this now. There are no good Saturday morning cartoons anymore. I don't even know that there are cartoons anymore on Saturday mornings that are not Disney related and on their channel, So I'm not surprised there was a cartoon of this. There was a cartoon of everything else. There might as well have been one of this. So
it would be a good double feature with like the Toxic Crusaders
exactly.
and the horribly inappropriate This Shouldn't Be a Cartoon series.
Exactly. That sounds like something you could write about over at your website for sure. So, but
that'll be a good Den of Geek feature. Thanks for that.
I did remember when this movie came out. Now I didn't see it, and I'm going to say this: I have never seen this movie on purpose until we did it for this review. And it wasn't that I just didn't want to or anything. It was just one of those things I just didn't watch. By 1995, I had really kind of gotten out of my horror movie phase. I went and saw 2 horror movies inside of 2 years, and I can tell you which ones they were. I went and saw Halloween 6 at the Dollar Theater in 1995, and I saw Scream in 1996. Now, Scream reignited the passion, but really only after it came out on VHS. I remember seeing that in theaters and going, that's fine, and not really getting it, and then watching it the next time around and be like, oh, yeah, this is the amazing thing that it was. And it got me back into horror. But, anybody that's listened to our Halloween series knows that while I find kitschy fun in Halloween 6, I can't dare defend it as being anything, competent. And so I was done with horror at this point. I was kind of out of it. I was really much more into music at this point. So film was really kind of taking the backseat for me. So I didn't ever catch this. Now I know I've seen pieces of it here and there. And moreover, I think I've seen every show that the people that star in this movie have been on. I think I've seen everything Thomas Hayden Church has ever been on in television, going back to Ned and Stacy. See, I fell in love with Deborah Messing long before any of you did.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's one from the archives right there.
Yeah.
I mean, this was in the heart of Wings Mania. So, I mean,
yeah.
Thomas Hayden Church was a get.
Yes, exactly. He was the wings guy. I knew Jada Pinkett from Menace to Society, which I will still hold up as a better film of urban gang violence than Boys in the Hood. If anybody want to argue that one with me, just bring it on, because I got all day on that. And then CCH Pounder, I learned of her later, of course, because I was a huge S.H.I.E.L.D. fan, and she was one of my favorite characters of the S.H.I.E.L.D. So I knew her, and then William Sadler will always be the guy doing naked yoga at the beginning of Die Hard 2. It's for me. And I know he's in the Shawshank Redemption, and then Billy Zane, who, well, I'll just go ahead and say it. When you need someone to give a hilariously bad performance, no matter what the tone of the film is, he's your guy. Whether it's The Phantom or Titanic or Dead Calm or this movie or anything else he's in, Critters, whatever, he's always the same guy. And I actually love him for it. I think he's hilarious. So that's my connection to this, is I knew everyone that was in it, and seeing pieces of it here and there on television growing up, I kind of knew what was going on, but I didn't know anything about it, honestly, before I flipped it on to watch it before this review.
I can't believe you didn't know CCH Pounder from her pivotal role in RoboCop 3.
I have tried to erase RoboCop 3 from the memory banks for years.
Oh, it's not. Okay, I won't say it's not that bad. It is that bad. But, I mean, it got Fred Decker work, and that's, you can't complain about that. I mean, he did, like, Monster Squad. He deserves, like, all the work he can get.
This is true. But no, that's my connection to this. So I did not see this until, we got ready to do this for review. And I wanted to ask you, did you see it when it came out in theaters or what?
No, I did not see it when it came out in theaters. I did watch it when it came on stolen HBO. Because why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
I mean, we hardly ever went to the theater in that time period.
Yeah.
Because that was before they built the good new movie theater near my house. So all we had was a rundown, like eight screen multiplex where the doors were broken and the speakers rattled because they busted one out and just kind of run down. But yes, HBO, as usual, was my first exposure to this flick. Just like it was my first exposure to the seminal Billy Zane classic, Survival Island.
I have never crossed that one either.
It's him and some random guy, some random Spanish guy, and his then girlfriend, Kelly Brook, who is widely available naked on the internet. And she's one of those British page 3 girls or whatever, the topless models that they put in their excuses for newspapers. And she has 2 great big talents.
That movie just sounds like another bad ripoff of The Most Dangerous Game story that I read in elementary school growing up. So.
That's definitely a fair assessment. But Billy Zane does play Billy Zane quite well.
Well, as I would expect him to do. So, and I don't know. That I found that to be fun. But now you actually know that there are people. Some of the people in this had connection to the show otherwise, right?
Yes, William Sadler. The whole impetus behind us watching this flick was one day I discovered that basically all the episodes of Tales from the Crypt are on YouTube. So I was like, all right, cool. I haven't seen this in, since 1990, whatever. So I fire up the first episode, and right there is William Sadler playing an executioner who gets fired and then becomes basically a freelance electrical vigilante. Killing people who he feels deserve to die, usually via electrocution. And he's great in it. He's great in the episode. So I figured, why not? And then when I saw he was in Demon Knight, which I'd forgotten that he was the guy, it just kind of became an obvious choice. Especially when I couldn't talk you into taking on 92 episodes of Tales from the Crypt.
Yeah, this is another one of those Twitter conversations that started with we got to find a way to do this. And having just finished, Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its 140 some odd episode run, I was like, another 92. I don't know. And knowing in 2015, Brian and I are going to start Angel, and I was like, I don't know if I can squeeze another whole show in there. But I knew there were movies because I know the second movie well. We'll talk about that next time. So I dug up on the internet and I was like, hey, there are 3 films that are Tales from the Crypt Presents films, not the 72 Tales from the Crypt anthology, but there are 3 movies that got produced. What about those? And you were like, yeah, let's do it. And so I said, okay, I'm down for that because I had never seen Demon Knight or the third one, Ritual. I have seen Bordello of Blood.
I have not seen Ritual. I did not know Ritual existed.
Yeah, I don't know that
So
many would. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get there. But when we're doing films here on Film Strip, particularly horror films, the running joke amongst the staff is, can we find one Jay hasn't seen at least 300 times? And most of the time, the answer is no. I've probably seen it, being the consummate horror fan. But these were ones I hadn't seen, so I'm always down to go for something like that. Like if I haven't seen it, I'm always curious to be the newbie on a show. That never happens. So in this show, so I was down for it. I was like, yes, I will do this, no problem. But again, I knew nothing about it before I went in and saw it. I didn't even watch the trailer to it before I put it in and just turned it on. And what I saw was very different than what I expected. I will say that now. So very, very interesting. So we get some more stuff too. Now, do you know the director from anything else? Because I don't know Ernest Dickerson from anywhere, and I got conflicting reports because in the movie he's credited as the director, but on the internet it tells me the producer had a lot of hand in it and actually reshot some of it too. So I don't know what the story is there.
Yeah, I don't know what the story is, but the director is a cat named Ernest Dickerson, as you mentioned before, who will be very well known to fans of The Walking Dead. He directed the second season finale, which is one of the show's higher moments, the one where the zombies overrun Herschel's farm, and distinguished character actor Scott Wilson, who was in Cold Blood, let's not forget, stands there with a never-ending shotgun with the infinite ammo cheat code, just blowing zombies away for a good 5 minutes while his farm burns down around him. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful shot. And he's done some really good stuff, especially like as part of the Walking Dead team. He also did a Masters of Horror episode, which take that for what you will.
Well, again, I knew the guy had directed a lot of television. I think that's fine. And I'll be honest with you, this feels like a television show. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Low budget horror can do that sometimes. And, one of the tropes of good horror is confinement. And they certainly are going to do that in this film. I mean, it's mostly one set after the opening, which we'll talk about. But I don't know. I was impressed with most of what happened directorial wise, not knowing the guy from anything else, like I say. But like I say, everything I've read on the internet is that the producer did go back in and have some say on shots and maybe reshot some of it because they're double credited in a lot of places. So, whether the DGA ever recognizes it or not, that's sort of what's out there. So, and he doesn't come back for the sequel. That was actually done by Gilbert Adler. So,
I don't know why you would have to reshoot behind the guy who shot the immortal Juice.
Well, if you can frame Tupac correctly, surely you can get this right. So that is a Tupac joint, right? I'm right.
Yes,
that
is.
I get my West Coast and East Coast gangster rappers of the '90s mixed up in their film careers. But I tell you what, though, Ron, why don't you give us a plot summary? We'll get into this one. Tell us what happens in Demon Knight.
Okay, after the opening framing device starring the Crypt Keeper and featuring John Larroquette as an uncredited slasher, we get into the film. Breaker, played by William Sadler, has a key with an ancient power. The Collector, Billy Zane, at the height of his powers, wants it back. The pursuit leads them to a small town, and after a fiery car crash and some gunfire, Breaker has escaped with a little help from Uncle Willie, played by legendary Dick Miller,
yes,
and holed up in a former mission turned hotel run by Irene, CCH Pounder, and her niece Geraldine, played by Jada Pinkett. That's when the Collector shows up looking for what's his. Caught up in the ensuing Rio Bravo situation are Hood with a Heart of Meat Colleen, played by Brenda Bakey, who was Lana Turner in the LA Confidential.
That's who that chick was, yeah.
Yes, hard to believe. She did that only a few short years after she did this movie.
Wow.
And then she fell off the face of the earth.
Yes.
Her boyfriend, Roach, Thomas Hayden Church, and a whole host of other characters destined for the wood chipper, courtesy of the Collector and his demon friends. Will the key be protected by the titular Demon Knight? Will Billy Zane eat all the sets? Will we sneak in our quota of nudity before the movie's over? Find out the answers to all these questions and more as we discuss Demon Knight.
And I guess we should blow the ending also in the end. No, he doesn't get it back, and it winds up going to Jada Pinkett somehow. So we'll get into that, I guess, as we get into the film. That's a good, energetic plot summary. So I want to skip over the framing devices because we'll come back to those, I think, at the end. There's a prologue and an epilogue. We can talk about those. But I want to talk about the bulk of the film here. And the way it starts out with the car chase and the car wreck and the explosion. Have you ever seen a Charlie Sheen joint called The Wraith?
Yes.
Oh, I so was hoping you would say yes to that because that is a childhood favorite of mine. It's been a long time since I revisited it. That one might be worth it some other day. But when I saw this scene and the car wrecked and then Billy Zane walked out of it along with the other guy basically getting out of it, I said, it's like I'm watching The Wraith, but with the Smokey and the Bandit Trans Am.
Yeah, it really did feel pretty similar to the Wraith, and I thought for sure that one of them was going to, I know how it is, but I figured the first time I watched it, I figured one of those guys was going to be some kind of ghost or a monster or something, or like a Terminator.
Yeah.
But it's Billy Zane.
I do like how they play with it at first, though. For about the first 10 or 15 minutes, you don't know which one's the bad guy or the good guy. Like, it's framed in a way that Billy Zane is actually trying to stop the William Sadler character from doing something that would be bad. And what we learn later is that that's not the case at all. But that's playing with types because Billy Zane can be the good guy or the bad guy. William Sadler is almost always the bad guy. So if you know their faces from anything, even at this point in their career, that would have been the fake out. And that's certainly what I thought here. I was like, oh, Billy Zane's the good guy? Oh, cool. And so I thought that was going to be the fun we had.
Well, it helps that, Breaker has that occult-looking tattoo on his hand.
Yeah.
And the first thing we see him do after he, shoots a rifle at a car is try to steal another car.
Yeah.
So he's clearly he's clearly setting himself up as the Kyle Reese type of hero.
Yeah.
In which case he's slightly more anti-hero because he's not terribly friendly throughout the whole flick.
No, matter of fact, he doesn't even really want to be around people. He's just trying to hide. And what we'll come to know is that symbol on his hand is a symbol of 7 stars, that when they're aligned, it's the time for the demons to try to possess one of these keys. Now, explain to me the plot device known as the key here, because this is going to get played again, but in a different way, if I remember it correctly, in Bordello of Blood.
Yes, it's the same key prop.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's supposed to be the same key or not. I would assume not, since Jada Pinkett didn't have it.
Yeah.
But basically, this key is a metal thing with a glass ball on top, and inside the glass ball is the blood of Jesus and many other people. Yeah. And apparently, either the key or the remnants of Jesus' blood turned this liquid inside the key into a magical demon blocking, demon killing force field MacGuffin device.
Yeah, I love how it all gets laid out for us, is that through history, starting at the crucifixion, someone collected some of this blood, and there were all these keys that kept the demons locked up. And throughout time and history and apparently portals and places, they've collected almost all of them but this one. And so now it's the time they're coming after it. And through history, there has been a carrier that has been somewhat of an anti-hero, like you say, just someone that reluctantly carried the thing around through different places in time. And we get lots of flashbacks from these things. It usually jumps like 2,000 years. It's somebody at Jesus' crucifixion, then a soldier in World War I, then Breaker. So, there's apparently been more, though. And they're basically supposed to carry this thing until they identify who the next carrier of it will be, and then they pass it along and mix the blood, and it's all kind of hokey. But I'll say this, for just the plot device, the MacGuffin that we're going to chase, I kind of liked it. It reminded me of some of the stuff Buffy would do. They would just, for the one-off episodes, they would just throw this stuff around, and it kind of reminded me of one of those. So I was cool with it.
It works to me because it feels like the exact same kind of dumb plot device that you would get in an actual episode of Tales from the Crypt. It's just a two-parter with a little bit more star power, and the same kind of hokey little slightly better special effects, but the same kind of hokey B-movie comic book spirit.
Well, I was going to say, was this what the show was mostly like?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this is definitely would fit well alongside the rest of the episodes. I mean, both, at least two of the films would. I would say that this one is more like the more serious episodes,
Mm-hmm.
and then Bordello of Blood is a great example of when the show like decides to just be goofy and splattery.
Well, we'll get to Bordello in a bit, but I always think about that when shows try to do movies because I remember the two X-Files movies. If
Right.
you remember those, and they were examples of what the show kind of was. It was vacillated between the main story of alien abduction and then just bat bug nuts crazy, religious imagery, and that's kind of what it was. So I wondered, I'm like, I bet this feels like a show, and it kind of feels blocked like a show. It feels written like a show that got stuck together. Two episodes you can jam together for a hour and a half movie, and so in that way it works. But I'll say this: we get introduced to our crowd pretty quick because Breaker winds up at this it's an old church that's now like a boarding house / whorehouse / kitchen. It's got lots going on in the Alamo there or whatever they're trying to do. But we get our whole cadre of characters. And you mentioned Wally, the postal. Well, no, you didn't mention Wally. You mentioned Uncle Willie, the guy there at the beginning. We got to talk about this dude. Of course, most will probably remember him as Mr. Futterman from the Gremlins movies, right?
Right. That's clearly his most famous role in the modern era. But Dick Miller has been in L.A. has been a fixture in L.A. forever. I mean, if you can't throw a rock at a Roger Corman movie from the 50s through the 70s without hitting Dick Miller. I mean, he was even in Rock and Roll High School.
Wow. So he's been around the block, is what you're saying. So.
Oh, he's definitely in the That Guy Hall of Fame.
Well, of course I know I've seen him in other stuff, but I always think of Gremlins when I see him. But he's fun. I mean, he's always playing like somebody that looks like he's been on a 3-day bender and needs a good shower.
And here he definitely is playing that guy.
Yeah.
So he makes his look work for him because
exactly.
it's Uncle Willie looks like he has a distinctive smell.
Yes. You could smell him on the screen almost. So. But we meet him and the rest of the townsfolk, right? You've got the prostitute Cordelia, which is funny. I didn't know she was Lana Turner in the L.A. Confidential either. But, you've got her. You've got We're Waiting on Boyfriend. We'll talk about Thomas Hayden Church in a minute. You've got Postal Clerk Wally that looks like he could have been one of Andre the Giant's children. Because he's got the same haircut that Andre sported in the 70s. And I don't know that dude from anything else, but I'm sure I've seen him in things. He seems like a TV actor kind of guy. And he's clearly got the crush on her, but he's been fired from the post office. So there's him, and then there's Geraldine or Geraldine. They call her both of them at different times. But she's Jada Pinkett before she was, Smith. And good old Irene. Now, CCH Pounder to me is the hilarious performance of the day because I don't know. She's like playing a cross between one of the mammies in Gone with the Wind and then like a boarding, any boarding house runner of any time. Like I don't know what she's trying to channel, but it is awfully hilarious to listen to her spit these lines out with such succession.
Yeah, she definitely doesn't shy away from her material. That's for sure. She's definitely found an angle, and she's going to go with it.
Yeah.
And while it may only make sense to her, I think the movie's definitely better off for that kind of, throwing yourself into something that's beneath you sort of performance.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the time, I don't know that it was necessarily beneath her. I don't know what else she was doing. So, this is before a lot of her big success. I mean, The Shield is the thing that I think has made her great. But beforehand, I mean, she was just one of the people that got burned up in Face Off. I mean, that's all I would have recognized her for. So I liked her in this, though, and I liked Irene, especially when she gets her arm cut off later. And the way she plays it, like she just kind of runs around like, okay, well, I just got the one arm now,
Yeah, she does a good job of playing her severed arm for a laugh line.
Yes.
We could talk about that after she gets her arm ripped off, though.
Yeah. So that's her later, but I liked her. And then of course we meet the boyfriend Roach, Thomas Hayden Church. And you talked about the Wings era. Yeah, this is definitely Wings era Thomas Hayden Church. Yeah, got the hair going. It's before he did the workout regimen, quote unquote, that he had for Sandman and some of the other stuff he's done. And it's long before Sideways. So I don't know. I always think of Thomas Hayden Church as just that voice. Doesn't look like it should be coming out of that man, but it does.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the more interesting looking, sounding actors in Hollywood. It's very much like he's kind of like a Patrick Warburton in that way.
Yeah.
And that voice shouldn't be coming out of that face, but here we are. I mean, he looks like a murderer, but he kind of talks like a surfer.
Well, he always does talk like he's high. I think that's kind of clear. He's just this mellow, kind of low, droll. That's the Thomas Hayden Church. The best I could do of it. But
talks like he's high.
Yeah, he talks like he's high and incredibly bored with everything that's happening around him. Like no matter what the stakes.
Not actually high, just talks like.
Yeah.
Don't sue us.
I doubt he's listening to this show. So maybe if he was still doing shows like Wings, he would be. But anyway, so but what the people I love the most though in this opening act are the sheriff and the deputy that come in, because you talk about like Barney and Warren, if they were running the Mayberry Circus as the sheriff and the deputy. First off, they're on the trail of whoever's been involved in this horrific auto accident, and they meet up with Billy Zane, who just walks out of nowhere like, oh, that was my car, and begins the trail of performance that he's going to lay on us. And my question to you is, what do you think the direction given to Billy Zane was exactly, and how he was supposed to play this? Because, like I say, the first few minutes you think, oh, he might be the good guy, but then you learn he's the bad guy. But he never changes tone. He sounds the same the whole time.
I can only assume that it was part of the plan, maybe, or that it's whatever he had planned for himself.
Yeah.
And all that basically changes is he drops his accent.
Yeah.
Throws his cowboy hat away and goes on a rant about the Old West dialogue, or the Old West clothing, or whatever it was he was talking about.
Yeah.
I can't help but feel like either that was a choice by the directors, or Billy Zane chose it and they didn't care enough to stop him.
Well, and who knows how long it took them to actually shoot this. This doesn't look like it was one of those, 5-month projects. This looks like about 3 weekends, on the back lot. This got turned out. So with a bunch of people that were coming over from the other sets of what they were working on that day. Like Thomas Hayden Church literally looks like he walked off the set of Wings. Changed out of the blue overalls and just put on, Spicoli wear, and then came over to the set. So I don't know where they were getting them out of, but I don't know. I liked it. I like though that they play with that, right? You've got the sheriff and Deputy Bob encountering the collector, and he convinces them the breaker is this dangerous thief who's stolen something real valuable, and they catch right up to him. Usually this would be the trope of like an entire movie. It's finally catching up to the guy, and they get to it immediately. And sure enough, they're like, well, that's not even, he had told them he had a different name, and they search him and all this, and they find the thing they're looking for. And what gave me the first clue that, wait a minute, Billy Zane's the bad guy, is he has a box for the thing to go in, and he doesn't ask him just to stick it in there. He's like, would you pour that out real quick, and then we can put it in there? And I was like, uh-oh, there's something inside the magical amulet here that he doesn't like. And that's when, we didn't learn at the time, but we find out later that that's the whole blood mixture bit.
I think the thing that keyed me off to it, because I haven't seen it in years and I watched it again for this, I think the big key for me was when he wasn't like, all right, I'll take that. He was like, put this in this case for me, because clearly I can't touch it because I'm some sort of evil spirit.
Right. Yeah. When you can't touch the item that you say was yours, that's a clue that it's probably going to burn you, hurt you some way. You can't lay hand on it while it's in that form. Which I did find to be pretty interesting. So that he asked them to do that. And then that's when, all the hell starts breaking loose, almost literally at that moment. And we get to see some inept deputies firing guns, at random.
Yeah, they did a good job setting up the sheriff and the deputy as the comic relief characters. and then they promptly rip the sheriff's head off, and
Yeah.
and then Deputy Bob just kind of falls in line and really straightens up his act. He gets the standard goofy sidekick redemption, sort of plot.
Well, tell me, is the gore factor here the way that Billy Zane punches through the sheriff's head, basically Terminator 2 style? Is that kind of what you would get on the show? Because I don't remember the effects of the show very much.
Yeah, you would get that about every other episode, depending on how much money they'd spent so far in the season. There were always cheaper episodes, and then there were always kind of the more splattery, like let's shoot a guy with a crossbow in the face kind of things. So it really is like a good exemplar of what the show itself was, because it's gory, but it's also goofy, because he punches a hole in the guy, and it's and then Billy Zane goes out and does his little
crazy dance in the sand. So he cuts his palm, and out of the sand come all of these creature-looking things. They look kind of like the rejected versions of Ripley from Halloween, from Alien Resurrection, is what I got off of some of them. But they also kind of look like crypt keepers that were maybe rejected, but they just repurposed the puppets for later by stapling some dreadlocks on them or something.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Billy Zane has green blood.
Yes.
That's how you know he's either evil or a Vulcan.
Yeah, and I'm guessing evil because So at that point he's dropped all facade. He's like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I was going to play it easy, but never mind. So, and the funny thing I love about this is that he never explains his motivation. He just plays the role of Mephistopheles, Satan, whatever you want to call him here, with all these folks, because once he realizes that he's outside and here comes the demon attack and stuff, William Sadler then gets a gun and blows the eyes out of a couple of these things and then pours some of the blood over the door frames and whatnot to block them out, and that's when he starts telling people what's going on. And what's funny to me about that is that Breaker reluctantly lets everybody in on, knows what's happening. I'm like, at that point, man, they know it's next level. Like, you can go ahead and just level with everyone. You don't need to just keep it secret. And that's why I laughed when you said he's not really friendly the whole time. That's true. It's like he really wishes all these people would just go away. So, because all he's trying to do is make it to the next morning.
Yeah, the one who seems the most friendly is the bad guy. I mean, he at least pretends.
Yeah.
And Breaker is just curt the entire time. Like when he is sitting around the table and these people are attempting to make conversation with him while he's eating this bowl of guacamole soup with ketchup in it or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. He's just completely unfriendly. He's glowering. He's taciturn. It's really a good. I hate to say this, but it's actually kind of a good tortured guy performance.
I will say this now. There are a lot of things I can complain about in this film, but the performances of Billy Zane, which I've already said you're just going to get wacky all the time, and that's going to be what it is, and William Sadler are not two of them. I think they both know what they're in, and they just kind of go with it, and they have fun with it. And I think what they told William Sadler is, look, you're just going to be really pissed off at everybody the whole time, including yourself for reasons that are never explained. Got it? Go with it. And that's kind of what he played it as. And I don't know, I liked it, though. I like the fact that Breaker is, all the times when these kind of films come around, right, the hero is always this, almost, too righteous to be good kind of person, and it's almost like he's like, I didn't ask for this, it just happened to me, and I've been alive a long time and I really don't want it, and it bugs me. There's an episode in the first season of Buffy where they have this puppet that is possessed by a demon hunter's soul that's been hunting the same demon for like 80 years, and as the puppet he's sort of a dirty old man, and the reason he's become that way is because he's just sort of tired of being a puppet, and all he wants to do is kill the demon so he can actually die and go away. And it's sort of dark, but I thought of that watching Breaker here, and I thought that's sort of the same kind of performance. I mean, I get it. I liked the Breaker character.
Yeah, and it's the whole concept to me. I think It reminds me of something a little bit older. It reminds me of an episode of The Outer Limits called Demon with a Glass Hand. Have you seen that one?
Yes, I have seen that one. So excellent.
It just makes me think of that because he's on the run from these things that he doesn't really understand. He just knows he has to keep it out of their hands.
Right.
Not knowing not really wanting the job, not knowing, kind of being just like a dupe for these forces that are well beyond his control and things he's not particularly equipped to do battle with.
But he has to do it because he's the only one that's his charge at this point, right? And what we learn later is that he's really there because he's been driven there, and it's revealed to him somehow that Geraldine's going to be the one to take his place. That it's her turn to be the caretaker. If Billy Zane's the collector, then she's the caretaker, and she'll go on her own eternal run or semi-eternal run.
When the stars align on his hand,
right?
That's when he knows that he's about to make the drop to the next demon knight.
Right.
That's what Billy Zane calls her later in the movie.
Yeah.
And he knows it's her because she was tempted by his evil demonic visions, but she spit in his face instead of, falling for it like everybody else did. That's how he knew she was the one, because she had whatever it is that made her not take him up on his offer.
Well, she has the goodness in her soul to be able to resist temptation, because what we learn about her is that she went to jail for theft and now she's out of jail. She's trying to put her life back together, but this is kind of working this dead end job that the family member Irene gave to her, and she just sort of feels put upon, but she also is to blame for the reason she is the way she is. So kind of like Breaker, who was just a soldier in a foxhole, in World War I with one of his buddies, that he kept him alive long enough for the guy to be able to pass it on to him. It's, again, reluctant heroes. But I like the idea there. And you hit on something there. And let's talk about the way that the collector tries to, and successfully in a lot of ways, seduces all these people. He tries Geraldine and fails with her, but he works on Cordelia, right? Because he's able to basically seduce her.
Right. He just takes one look at her, deduces what her weaknesses are. I mean, given her profession, it's not that hard to tell what her thing is going to be, and it's being loved. So he's able to kind of use his Billy Zane-ness to win her over.
I love, though, the way that he plays it off, and then when he has possessed her, the demon version of her, how it comes out. I mean, she kills Wally, she cripples Irene before she's finally taken out. I liked it. I liked the over the top, goofy goriness of all of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Evil Dead 2 sort of.
Yeah.
Splattery, and it's not like an attractive sort of demon. It's not like the Billy Zane. It's a bumpy, gross, skin condition-y kind of demon.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Like, Billy Zane retains his form until the very, very end of being this kind of, real cut, good-looking guy or whatever. And Cordelia's beautiful woman, but then they turn her into this hideous thing when she goes on her rampage, which is, I guess it's the idea of, we're going to make the inside be the outside, right? That old idea?
I don't know if it's that or just because he is different from those other demons in that he can lose his eyes and it doesn't kill him.
Right.
But when you shoot, say, Cordelia in the eyes, it kills her.
Right.
I would say that it's because he's the archdemon.
Yeah.
I mean, we do see him use psychic powers to brush her tears away from the parking lot, and he talks to her with a creepy smile on his face without actually moving his mouth.
Good point. I forgot about the not moving the mouth bit. That's a good idea. I forgot that he did that. So
yeah, he just kind of stares at her, and she hears the words in her head, and he just kind of looks at her, and then that's when it's over.
Now we forgot one character we've got to talk about here, and it's the kid who Breaker was going to steal his dad's car early in the movie, Danny, the little kid, and they kind of throw him in and out of here, and he plays a key role at the very end of this. And I immediately when I see a kid in a horror movie like this, I've just been conditioned by Stephen King through the years. I'm like, yep, that kid's evil. You know, like I don't know. I guess I didn't play along with it at all. Now that's what it turns out as. But did you get that sense too?
No, I didn't think he was evil. I had assumed he was going to be there to just be in peril.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's always a little kid who's going to, screw up and let the demons in, or
let the purge happen in the house or whatever.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's always some kid that makes some mistake, right? So.
And I figured that would be his role. I was pleasantly surprised when he did turn evil, though.
I kind of like the way they turned him evil, too, in the end. But he's actually part of the plot here in the middle because he goes missing. And everybody then has to split up and look for him. And that's when Geraldine gets tempted and she spits it right back in the dude's face. And I actually thought at that moment, I was like, this is where Jada's going to get it. I did not figure out Jada was going to be the survivor girl until it was over. And I thought, I wouldn't have picked that. I thought Sadler would have walked out of here over the dead bodies of all these other people. I didn't know she was going to make it.
Well, let's remember that Jada Pinkett is blonde in this movie.
She is.
So she fulfills the role of, she has the appropriate hair color to be Final Girl.
This is true. Maybe that is actually what they're trying to tell us too. So, but I didn't catch that. I didn't think she was going to be Final Girl as it was. But along the way, Breaker has told them the story, and then they hole up in the attic here. Right. And while this is going on and everybody's going around to look for Danny, Roach has snuck the key out of Breaker's satchel and goes to make his own deal with the devil, which I thought was hilarious because he's like, yeah, I don't care about these people. Screw these people. I want out of here. And he doesn't even ask for anything cool. That's the thing. I'm like, he wasn't going to get anything out of it anyway because he gets torn to shreds by the demons. But he doesn't even go for that. He's just like, yeah, I figured this is yours. I'm going to give it back to you. Can I go now?
I don't even think he asked for anything. I think he just said, all right, I'll give you this thing and I can leave. All right, cool.
Yeah.
See you with that 1,000 years of hell or whatever it was he mentioned.
Yeah, it's like, and go ahead and kill that Breaker guy. He's real annoying. Yeah. And I was like, okay. And then I do love the Billy Zane, though. Oh, by the way, I lied. And then they just tear him to shreds. And I was like, well, so long, Thomas Hayden Church. It was nice knowing you. So I'll see you on that next episode of Ned and Stacy. And then we'll move on. But I don't know. I thought that was cool, though, because there's always somebody, right, that betrays the group. But it's rarely played off with such hilarity.
Right, yeah. And they set up Roach hard. They set up Roach so hard to be the guy to betray the group that I assumed it wouldn't be him.
Yeah,
because that movie, there's always the guy who comes around at the end. But in this case, no, he's that guy throughout the entire thing. Then he gives the key over, and goes to his being eaten.
Yeah,
destiny. Anyway, sorry.
No, you're good. No, I thought he was actually going to come back as a demon. Like, that's the thing. I kept waiting for him and all these other people that got killed by the demons to then turn around and come back as demons, because we do that, right? That happens all the time, and I kept waiting for that to happen. And then when it didn't, I was kind of surprised. I was like, okay, well, they're actually dead. That's you don't get that in this kind of horror movie a lot of times. They're always getting repurposed.
Maybe there wasn't enough left of him to repurpose.
I would suppose not. Maybe the demons were hungry. You never know.
Maybe he was already evil, so there was no point in having to possess him because he's already a bad guy.
Well, or maybe when they ate him to get to his soul, they're like, hey, he really didn't have one. So what do you know? So, but yeah, I love this though, because again we advance the chase a little bit forward. And we figure out in there that Irene and Bob discover that Wally was we talk about trope, planning to attack the post office, but he had like guns, but no bullets. But he did have a grenade vest that he was going to use that they will end up using to wipe out most of the demons.
Right. This was not long after the whole going postal thing, so I think it was still a relatively fresh reference then. Mm-hmm. But I could be wrong. It could have already. It kind of pretty much instantly became a trope. that every postal worker is slightly disturbed or otherwise dangerous.
Yeah, and what's funny, my brother's worked for the post office for 17 years, so when I saw this, of course I had to joke with him about it. And he said, yeah, that was about the same time. So
Did you tell him to make sure he had plenty of bullets for his Uzis?
I did,
just in case.
Yeah, so make sure when you pack your 9 that you've got a few round changes, so to come around with it. But what I figured was Wally was just kind of building up to it, so he's like buying it a piece at a time. He had to wait for that next unemployment check to come through, or maybe his last paycheck to get the bullets. I don't know. So, but they're going to play that for that way, which I thought was funny, and so the collector possesses Uncle Willie. Now, this is the possession that I really liked because I thought Dick Miller looked awesome as the possessed demon. He was great.
They did a phenomenal job accentuating his weirdness.
Yes,
but making it pretty clear that Uncle Willie was a harmless old drunk. But this guy is definitely, to me, he was probably the most scary looking, the most effective demon. Mm-hmm. Just because Dick Miller is such like a little skinny old man,
Yeah. Well, talk about it, though, how he seduces him. He walks into a room and he gets I guess it's a mirage that he's in like a tiki bar that's full of topless Hawaiian tropic bottles.
Right. And Billy Zane is your bartender, making him an infinite glass of scotch.
Yes, like the greatest stuff ever, and he just keeps pouring it, and then that's how he seduces him. But I thought, again, for the way Satan, evil gets troped in horror movies a lot of times is that it is a temptation. And I'm always curious when they come up with a unique way of showing us and playing that temptation. And especially when they do it in a way that is pretty accurate to, if you read scripture, the way that it goes. You're never tempted with stuff that you don't care anything about. You're tempted with what you're really possessed by, and that you can't deal with without. And I don't know, I like the way that they played it. It was, yeah, like I said, it felt very authentic.
And it gets us our nudity quotient.
Yes, it does, because there's quite a bit of that in the movie. To answer that question, yes. And now, was the show that way being on HBO? I kind of always assumed it was, because when I saw it in syndication, you can tell it was, we panned and scanned way, way tight on a lot of shots.
Yeah, they were not afraid of showing the best of early 90s breast implants.
Yeah, they definitely were going to show it off, and they did a lot of that showing off in the scene. But I love, we take out the Uncle Willie now, so we're getting it down. We're doing the pick-off. It's getting down to near the bottom, and Irene and Bob decide, you guys go hide upstairs in the attic. We're going to, go down what was that? It reminded me so much of Vasquez and Gorman in Aliens, right? Where they shoot up all their ammo, which these never had any ammo, but it's like, fine, you pull the pin, and then they blow away everything down below, which, I don't know a lot about high explosives, Ron, but I'm pretty sure if you blow the foundation out from underneath you, the attic is not going to stay. I'm fairly certain that it will come crumbling down.
Well, it depends on what kind of ordnance, what kind of grenades they were.
Yeah.
If they were anti-personnel grenades, it would just be a lot of fragmentation that would probably still kill the people in the attic, but it wouldn't take down the walls. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at my attic door right now.
And wondering what would happen if you threw a pineapple grenade at it. So.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, well, I don't test that theory, but I agree. I think the shrapnel alone might cause a lot of damage.
Because it wasn't just 1 or 2 grenades; it was like 8.
Yeah, it was a whole vest. The idea was Wally was going to go in, shoot at the post office, pull the pins, and blow the place up. So there wasn't going to be survivors. There were just going to be pieces left. But we have to have a way for people to sacrifice themselves nobly and to. Well, we've picked off the humans. We now got to pick it off where it's just the collector and the good guys, the 2-3 good guys left at the end. And what's left are Breaker, Geraldine, and Danny. And then we see what I think may be the most interesting possession or brainwashing that there is. Danny gets a comic book that's a Tales from the Crypt. That's basically where he does the whole I'm watching the story about us unfold on the pages.
Yeah, and they do a good job of matching the pages of the comic book to the shots in the movie.
Mm-hmm. It's almost like they took the storyboards and then panned up to, and this is what we actually shot. So it looked that way.
To me, my favorite part about that whole thing is that EC Comics originally shut down in the 50s because Congress said that these comic books were making kids into murderers and demons and monsters and jazz musicians.
Which are all the same thing, according to Congress.
Right. So, and that's why William Gaines went and found Mad. Because he lost all his money from Vault of Horror and all the his whole publishing empire, basically, of EC Comics was put out of business because of the furor over the horror comics. So
was that part of like McCarthyism and all that stuff from that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was right about that time. And of course you can kill all the Indians you want on TV, but if you have a skeleton in a comic book, it's going to make kids into monsters.
Right.
And that was a fun kind of history lesson, I guess, or just use of the history of the Tales from the Crypt comic book.
I guess it's a way to be self-referential without being too creep showish, because at this point, anything like this is going to get compared to that. And as a matter of fact, I think at this point, Creep Show 2 had actually happened. So, I mean, there's even that to go against. So, I don't know. I liked it, though, because, again, as a device, how are you going to brainwash, a kid? Well, you got to go after something that the kid's into. So it's either G.I. Joe cartoons, the Muppet Babies, or the comic books. And I guess Danny was a little above the other two, so they went with the comic book. And I like it, though. I like how he turns evil and mortally wounds Breaker before Geraldine finally is able to destroy him.
That was both an effective use of the door seal.
Yeah.
That was a great kill, I thought. And I also liked the way that the demon attack went, because it kind of harkens. It's a look forward to our next episode, in that the demon uses his giant tongue to rip out Breaker's heart. Yes,
which is really grotesque. It's one of the most gross scenes that they have as a part of it. But Geraldine gets activated as the new guardian of the key, and I love her idea here. She pours the blood all over herself and then gets a mouthful of it and spits it in the face of the collector. That was a cool kill, and that's what makes him transform into the golden child-like demon there at the end.
I also like that we can clearly tell the entire time she's got something in her mouth.
Yeah.
But they do a 5-minute dance scene together.
Yes.
Where Billy Zane is just swinging her around and, going through dips and waltzing, and he's talking about how he wants to make her his wife. And we know it's coming, but they drag it out for so long in a good way that it's still kind of surprising, because it's like, oh, right, she had that stuff in her mouth the whole time, the blood.
I almost wonder if they didn't insert that scene because they're like, it's obvious she's about to spit in his face, because we've already seen her do that. Like, she's just going to pay off what she's already done. So we need to take people's attention away from it. So we do this goofy dance scene where he tries to tell her he loves her and could you me too, and that whole bit. And then, of course, she spits it in his face, which was, again, a really cool way to kill him and destroy him. And that's it. I mean, that blows it all wide open.
And that was, to me, one of the more memorable scenes in the film. Mm-hmm. Like, when I think about it, I think of Billy Zane rising to the attic on that elevator with the green mist around him.
Yep.
And then the long dance scene that culminates in him becoming the giant demon.
Yeah. So, and then burning into flame and going away. I liked the way that this ended, and they set it up. And then when they set her on the road, she gets on a bus, and right before she gets on the bus, she poes out a little on there, because apparently she's picked up blood from other people along the way.
She got it from
was it from Breaker?
Yeah.
Okay.
She poured it on herself the first time, and then she went back and refilled it with Breaker's blood.
Okay, so yeah, because the idea is that you can put a lot of noble people's blood in it, and it'll keep mixing with residues from Christ, and that will keep giving it its magical power. and stuff. So I like how she pours a little bit on the seal though, and they pull up like less than a mile away. There's another bus stop on the middle of this deserted highway, and there's a guy running around out there that it kind of looks like Mario Van Peebles in a cowboy hat, and he decides not to get on the bus, and they exchange stares as you see the next chapter in this Demon Knight tale take off.
She encounters Steve James on the road to Damascus.
I almost wondered if that was him. So.
I looked up to try to figure out who it was, but I couldn't figure out who it was.
Yeah, it wasn't anybody I knew from anything else. But he kind of, I don't know, he looks almost like Andre Benjamin, too. So.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
So he's a little bit of that. But anyway, it's a cool ending, and then we go back to our epilogue. So now I said I didn't want to talk about the framing devices till the end. This has all been around the idea that the Crypt Keeper is now in the movie business, right? And the opening scene is a woman in lingerie writhing on a bed talking about killing somebody was almost as good as sex. Then she gets in a tub, and then John Larroquette with like flesh hanging off of him comes to stab her, and he yells "cut."
Right.
Yeah. So and then we flash back to the scene, and it's all about the Crypt Keeper saying, did you like my movie? And then he goes to the premiere, and he gets his head cut off or something. Was that something on the show where they kept like executing the Crypt Keeper for some reason?
No, but he was always like falling apart. There was always some excuse for the puppet to get damaged in some way, but I don't ever remember him specifically getting like decapitated. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen. There are 92 episodes, and I don't remember them all clearly.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'll say this though. For me, this film would have been. I would have had just a grand time without the framing devices. For me, they take me out of it, and I think they're supposed to. But as someone who's not a fan of the show, those seemed really superfluous for me.
Yeah, and I think that's why. I think in the next one, they put the framing device in for the home video market, but they didn't have it in the original like theatrical cut.
Okay. So I know there's a story behind that when we get to Ritual, too. So we'll talk about that then. But just as a device, I've already said it didn't work for me. What did you think of?
I enjoyed it just for the sheer nostalgia factor of seeing the Crypt Keeper again and hearing that crazy voice and all the terrible puns. To me, that's just what cements it as an episode of Tales from the Crypt. That was generally how the show, went along. The Crypt Keeper kind of introduced the action and then showed up at the end to make some goofy jokes, and then we got the theme music and the credits.
Right. So it's sort of like the anti-Rod Steiger from the old Twilight Zone. So.
Yes, Rod Sterling, not Rod Steiger.
Whoa, let me redo that. Whoa, I just brought in the priest from Amityville Horror. Whoa.
Yeah, don't let the internet listen to that part.
Yeah, let's fix that. So, hold on. So, in other words, he's the anti-Rod Sterling from the old Twilight Zone.
Right, yeah. He is the chain-smoking, greasy-haired narrator.
Or maybe he's what happened to that person after all that smoke.
Yeah, he's dead Rod Serling, yeah.
There we go. He certainly could have been. So, well, Ron, we're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings for the show. So what are yours for Demon Knight?
Well, I have to admit that having not seen this in a long time, I found it really enjoyable. I enjoyed the pure goofiness of it. I really enjoyed the performances from our two lead characters, and I liked the weird thing that CCH Pounder was doing. So I'm going to give it a medium popcorn. I thought it was legitimately enjoyable if you like dumb things.
I will say this. If you like dumb things that are remotely scary and kind of fun and where the actors clearly know what they're doing and they're in on it and they go with it, then this is definitely your movie. Again, it's somebody who was not a fan of the show, was only peripherally aware of what the show was all about. I just enjoyed the story, and I enjoyed the goofy acting and the whole trope of it. And I actually thought it was, it was pretty inventive for what it was. I mean, there's nothing necessarily new, but it was also done really well. I think the effects work, and for 1995, I thought they held up okay. They weren't too bad for a $12 million film.
I really liked the rubber suit demons. I thought those looked really well. Those worked really well. And I think it's a really solid entry in the horror comedy genre that is really hard to do right. And I thought that
Yes.
was enough of both of them to stand up alongside your Return of the Living Deads.
Yeah, yes, or Ghostbusters or something, which is kind of the crown jewel of horror comedy. But yeah, I agree with you. I mean, those films are hard to get right, and this one is one of the ones that does. And I enjoyed it. So I'm going to say this is actually large popcorn for me. I had a real good time with this, and I will say this now: this would be the kind of film to watch with like a group of friends. This would be fun to watch with people and be able to laugh at it with others, because it's certainly something to be enjoyed in mass, and I can see why people went for it. It made money, and why they real quickly said, we got to get another one of these out. This was huge. Who can we get? And then we come back with Bordello of Blood. So we'll talk more about that one next time. But I enjoyed this as well. So I'm going to go large popcorn.
I'll go ahead and upgrade my popcorn too. Let's do a large popcorn.
Okay, so large popcorn for both of us for Demon Knight. So folks, you can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com. Click the link for Film Strip, and you can find all the episodes there, linked by keyword or host or title or series or whatever they are. They're all there. You can also find links to our other podcast, The Art of Slaying, where our Buffy the Vampire Slayer retrospective resides, that you've heard me mention a few times. And you can also link to the Fabish Factor Film Podcast, as well as Squared Circle Flashback. Find links to our Facebook and Twitter pages, so you can catch up with us on social media as well. We appreciate your support. And Ron, folks can find your writing at denofgeek.com and popfi.com, correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right, well, folks, check it out. Let us know what you think. And until next time, for Ron, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Film Strip.
Tales from the Crypt.